to call the June 27th, 2016 Prescott Valley Board of Adjustment meeting to order. Before we go to the agenda, I have a Board of Adjustment meeting format statement I would like to read. My name is Linda Shimon. I am the chairperson of the Board of Adjustment, and I will be presiding over the board's deliberations on hearing items this evening. The Board of Adjustment is an impartial body made up of residents of the town of Prescott Valley who volunteer their time and efforts and are guided by state and local rules and regulations. This evening's proceedings will be conducted using the following format. First, I will read the hearing application into the record. Following the identification of the hearing application, staff will present the case and their recommendations to the board, after which questions from the Board of Adjustment will be directed to staff regarding the case. After the board initially reviews the application, the floor will be open for comment, at which time the applicant will have the opportunity to address the board regarding the matter and answer any questions. That phase completed, we will open the floor to comments from the public regarding the case before the board. I ask that you direct your pertinent comments to the board through the chairperson and not the applicant, staff, or individuals within the audience. I would also appreciate your cooperation in making your statements brief and to the point, as I may exercise the prerogative to confine public comment if need be, should there be considerable public involvement in the case. Proceeding with the agenda, representing the town of Prescott Valley staff this evening, Christy Jones, Administrative Assistant, Specialist, and Fernando Gonzalez, Code Enforcement Supervisor. Ms. Jones, would you be kind enough to call the roll, please?
Chairperson Shimon.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Kyle. Member Johnson.
Here.
Member Gamble.
Here.
Member Wood.
Here.
We will proceed to approval of the minutes. If the board has reviewed the minutes, I ask, are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Are there any public announcements?
No, just like to introduce Gary. She's our administrative assistant who will be here jointly helping out with the Board of Adjustment packets and things of that nature.
Thank you. For the applicant, since we do not have a full board, under Article 1329060, the applicant may, if they choose, postpone the hearing of this until next month when there will be a full board present. Would you like to continue or would you like to postpone? The applicant chooses to continue. We would next, are there any public announcements? Did we do that?
No.
Okay. On the agenda would be the election of officers. Since we do not have a full board, I move that we postpone the election of officers until next month's meeting when a full board will be sitting. May I have a second?
So moved. Or second?
Christy, would you call the vote, please?
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon.
Yes?
Member Gamble.
Yes.
Member Wood.
Yes.
The motion carries. Election of officers will be postponed until the July meeting. I will now read the item before us into the record, UP 16001. Upon the application of Davin Benner, Granite Basin Engineering Incorporated, agent for Business Management Services International, a request for a use permit per section 1315.070C10 of the Town of Prescott Valley zoning ordinance in order to expand the maximum medical marijuana cultivation facility square footage. The subject property is located in Prescott Valley, APN 40214-239X. Mr. Gonzalez, would you make your staff presentation, please?
Sure, thank you, appreciate that. The subject property is located in M1 zoning district. It is an industrial district. It does carry a PAD designation, which is a plan area development. The plan area development requires the applicant for any use or construction of the property to submit to the town council a final development plan for approval, outlining general site development standards. The zoning district also is intended for sufficient space for appropriate locations for industrial and heavy impact uses while not necessarily attractive or conventional in nature. It's installed in a way to operate in a manner so as to not inconvenience any other use within that district. It's important to note that on November the 2nd, 2010, the voters of Arizona approved Proposition 203 for the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. Codifying in ARS 36-2801, the AMMA provides for medical use, possession, cultivation of marijuana for those persons suffering from debilitating medical conditions. Further, the AMMA authorizes municipalities to adopt reasonable zoning restrictions that limit the use of land registered for dispensaries in specific areas. On January the 27th, 2011, the resolution number 1733 was voted by the mayor and council in the town of Prescott Valley under ordinance number 753, outlining the use regulations of medical marijuana dispensaries within the town of Prescott Valley. Medical marijuana cultivation facilities are first allowed by matter of right in a C3 zoning district, which is a commercial minor industrial zoning district, subject to regulations found under 1315-070. Town Code Section 13-1507-0C10 allows for a maximum floor area of 3,000 square feet for any dispensary within the town, but also allows for an expansion of that cultivation facility with the subject, under the subject or the benefit of a use permit. The facts indicate that the town of Prescott Valley Ordinance 753 allows for the expansion of cultivation facilities under Section 13-15-070-C10. Due to the fact stated above, staff recommends the board approve UP 16-001 under the following conditions. The applicant or his agent obtain all state and local permits required and licenses. Building permits must be obtained prior to any improvements or construction on the property, and that the expansion conforms with the town council approval of the final development plan. I added a fourth, that duration of the use permit be limited to a 2-year and subject to renewal at that time. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions you would have at this time, and the applicant is also present as well.
Thank you.
Madam Chairperson?
The chair recognizes Member Woods.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Gonzalez, I have a couple of observations or questions. Treat it any way you like.
Sure.
The ordinance says 3,000 square foot
That's correct.
with expansion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there any cap on how much expansion that can be? It costs, let me finish, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. From 3,000 to 95,000, that's 30 times what the ordinance calls for or allows. That seems quite a bit to me. I for some reason or other, from 3,000 square feet to 2 acres is kind of large. So I know you weren't privy to the town council when they passed the ordinance, but how did they arrive at the 3,000 square feet?
I believe 3,000 square feet was something generated. Now, again, I wasn't there at the council meeting, but I believe the state statute only allowed the 3,000, or there was some limitations. Of course, the town of Prescott Valley, this is all new to the jurisdictions as they just started adopting these. And I think 3,000 was the common denominator between a lot of local jurisdictions in this area. And the expansion, there isn't a cap because, again, we are not looking to cap anything. We just wanted to know how large some expansions for cultivation facilities were going to be.
Okay, to follow up on that, if I asked for 50 acres, would that be acceptable?
If you met the site development standards and the proper zoning, yes. The town of Prescott Valley actually has stipulations in place that doesn't allow you to put cultivations or dispensaries within 500 feet of certain protected uses.
I understand.
So the town of Prescott Valley would, the way it's chopped up or orientated, wouldn't allow you to have anything that large within the town.
Well, I was being a little facetious on the 50 acres. How about 10 acres?
If it meet the standards, yes. we would be before the board asking for that expansion.
And that would be approved?
It would depend on the board, yes. We would, if it meet the standards and everything was in place, we would be recommending the approval, yes.
May I continue, please?
Of course.
Is there any restrictions because of water usage?
Well, that would be something we would be looking at when something like that came to us. Let's say we had an issue with water. If something that large came to be, by all means, we would have meetings prior to that, and we'd be looking at water assurances at that time. This project here didn't actually trigger any of those issues, so they didn't come up. But something larger than that, yes, we definitely have meetings prior to coming before the Board of Adjustment. Actually, we had an IPR, initial project review, where we have the town engineers, the Public Works Department, Building Department, other staff members there, Fire Department, Police Department. We all commented on the project. And at that time, those issues would come up.
Okay, one last question.
Sure.
I noticed in the application, there was no mention of security other than the lock on the door. To me, that 2 acres of marijuana is like a candy store for some people.
We've had that conversation with the applicant, and he can expand on the security a little more than I could, but I know that in speaking to him, there was a lot of security, a lot of thought went into the security of the process. I know they're going to have high camera systems. The fencing around it's going to be up to 10 feet in height. It's going to be non-climbable. There's safeguards to the people that actually can go into the facility. But I would really like to have the applicant speak a little more about the security process and what they're intending to do regarding that.
I will ask a question again then.
Okay,
Thank
sure.
you, Mr. Gonzalez. I appreciate your time. Thank
No
you,
problem.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Would any other member of the board like to question Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, I would like to.
The chair recognizes Member Johnson.
It was just, when I was looking at the plan, I saw harvesting sheds. Are they, when the product is ready to ship, it's in there, or what? Is that a...
Again, I would probably defer to the applicant as far as the layout and what they're actually
There's more
doing.
curiosity than anything, and not going to stop, the process or anything. But...
Sure, sure.
And then the other question was reclaimed water. Can that be used at all? For growing marijuana? I don't know.
You know, within the process, again, I don't know. That's another question we'd ask the applicant as part of the operational portion of it.
You are close to the treatment plant, so.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And the fencing, would the fencing be similar to U-Picket?
Yes, it
Solid
would be,
fencing?
from what I understand. Yes, non-climbable, just kind of mirroring U-Picket.
Maybe he can expand on that a little bit.
Sure.
The chair would ask the applicant to come forward and address the board. Would you be kind enough to state your name for the record?
Yeah, legal name is William Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to first make a statement, or would you like to take questions from the board?
Well, I'd hope I can, if it's okay, to answer almost all of his questions. And
Then that would be your
Is that
statement.
okay.
Proceed, please.
Okay, thank you. The 3,000 square foot thing, it's hard to explain how each jurisdiction, laid out their rule sets, but 3,000 square foot might have been something that was more looked at in the dispensary side, where you actually have the retail. They had a lot of that happen in Phoenix. To be honest with you, my grow, which is one of the first few that were open, that's right outside of downtown Phoenix, is actually 10,000 square feet. It's a 12,000 square foot building, and back at that time, that was actually considered a large grow. And so 3,000 square foot is no different than someone's house. You just can't cultivate. It's just an impossibility. So relatively speaking, as the industry grows, the sites are growing too. And the proposed site that we have here allows for a little bit of that expansion. So we're not building out all 4 greenhouses at one time, but the whole portion of that lot will eventually get developed, and hope that even the neighboring lot will too, depending on how the industry grows. So we're kind of pacing with the industry when it comes to size and to supply and demand. So I ask that you try to keep an open mind, because there's a lot of demand on the market when it comes to supply, and the grows are kind of stuck in this limbo state. If I have that 10,000 square foot grow, the license that allows for that from the Arizona Department of Revenue, it's stuck. So for me to shut that operation down and start a new operation is very complex. You can't have two open at the same time. And the plant's life is pretty much 6 months long, so you can imagine that shutdown process and that starting up. So, certainly grows will keep getting bigger and bigger. I think security is on the top of the list as far as, what we're doing in there to protect the place when these do get bigger. In some sense, it almost seems like they go no different from smaller, because there's kind of still seemingly a target, even though certainly I've never experienced that from my current dispensary, my cultivation site. Even my colleagues, I know of one incident between all the people I know in the industry that currently own dispensaries and cultivation sites. But the Arizona Department of Health Services, who regulates us, highly regulates us in the security aspect as far as locking doors, gates, security, panic buttons. This is still considered a Schedule I narcotic, so we can't have any weapons of any self-defense on the site. So what we try to do is get real in tune with the local precinct and the local law enforcement. We have an open door policy for all of them. The purpose is for them to learn exactly how our site is set out. So in the event there was any type of response, they would know what's inside, what, when, where, and why. The first line of defense is exactly as Mr. Gonzalez stated. It's a 10-foot, no different than you picket. Could someone get over that? Yes, by all means. It would probably hurt, or they would use some type of sophisticated apparatus to get over, but they can get in. The second line of defense comes into motion detectors, infrared cameras. From the Arizona Department of Health Services, there can be no spot on this site where there is not covered by the cameras, and we're audited directly by them. So they audit the site, and they audit all our processes. So AZDHS regulates inventory control, seed to sale. We track absolutely everything. There's no product that's being sold out of that site whatsoever. And in the cultivation process, the plant is really useless to you and most people that would attempt to steal it, because they would probably kill it in the transport part. So to take a plant that's halfway through its cycle means absolutely nothing. When it becomes something, which is more on this side of this gentleman's question here, is in the dry cure sheds where you have taken it down now. It's not growing anymore, and we're harvesting the medicine, which is called the flower or the bud from the plant. Then it goes through pretty much a 15-day dry cure cycle, and that is what these sheds specifically are. At that time, the product is hung in there on dry racks. If you can imagine accordion-style dry racks where the flower specifically is laying over there drying, into which they'll lose roughly about 75 to 80% of their total weight. At that point is when that product actually becomes something that somebody probably would want to take. So we know where our vulnerabilities are, and we try to patch those up with added security, added or reduced hands-on, so we only have upper-level management or higher within our organization actually handling it at that time. Now, we do employ several trimmers to manicure the product so it shakes off all the kind of the excess, what people don't like to buy, and that's highly watched and regulated by team leaders, management, and certainly cameras and security. So we have 24-hour monitoring. We're working with the local precinct now just to get their ideas on security, so we lay out our security plan, and they have every opportunity to say, hey, we believe we should have sound recognition or recording. We would put that in for them. So as far as addressing the size of the site and the 50 acres and Mr. Gonzalez's response, that's a relatively small site up there. It's just hyper efficient, meaning that we've been around enough to learn the rights and the wrongs, and technology keeps increasing and knowledge keeps increasing. And what we're erecting here is a very low impact. We have no permanent structures at this time. Those greenhouses can literally come right out of the ground. They're basically inflated up. We have a very organic approach to cultivation. So what that means to the site is we have no damaging deposits going into the soil, nutrients that are going to stay and retain there that aren't beneficials. The water usage is at an absolute minimum, meaning there is a zero waste already built in to it. So we feed off of these little carrot sticks, and the carrot sticks go in the ground, excuse me, and they saturate the soil. And they recognize when the soil is saturated to a certain point, and it stops saturation. So we have no ebb and flow system, meaning we have no water coming out. It is using roughly 90% of the water we're putting in, and the rest is just kind of filtered out and being added to the rest of the ground. So that was by intent. You know, our intentions from an organic approach to a low impact approach. It's kind of all encompassing, you know, and we feel good about that and who we are and how we provide medicine to our patients, or the patients that exist in the state of Arizona.
Does any board member wish to question the applicant?
Yes, ma'am.
Member Wood?
Thank you, ma'am. Do you coordinate with the local police and when you're setting this up?
What was the last part of that, sir?
Do you coordinate with local police when you set this up and have a discussion with them about it?
Yeah, we coordinate with them. We're not required to.
Understand.
That's simply an option that is brought by Fernando himself and us, and they have a vested interest, so they're interested in us and sitting with us. So our contact over there, we've met with, we've sat with. I think their intern from NSA was there, and she had her input. So we take that collectively and continue to expand our security plan. That is a never-ending process, by the way, meaning if we had an option that we found suited better for that site, we would simply make that move. So we're constantly making sure that the place is secured, our employees are secure, the product is secure. It's in depth.
Okay. Are you limited to the number of dispensaries that you can provide product to?
No, sir.
None at all?
No. Not from a supply standpoint, no. You're limited to how many cultivation sites you can have per dispensary license, and that's a 1-for-1 ratio right now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members wish to question the applicant?
I have a couple questions, please.
The chair recognizes Member Gamble.
What will be the employment number when this is started, and then as it progresses, please?
Sure. We have roughly, on the phase one, we're looking at roughly 20 people. That's pretty typical of a full-time. That we will probably hire roughly 40 people, and then we'll alternate the 20. We have a very high success ratio with the senior community in Phoenix from a trimmer's perspective. So our hope is that with the robust retirement community here, that will provide a lot of part-time work for senior citizens and people that are in need of part-time employment. So that base is roughly, we have about 10 core team members that actually touch, feel, manage, and run that operation, including myself from a full-time perspective. And then we have just the alternate trimmers, which becomes more of the abundance employees than the team members. So as phase two kicks in, we will add very little to our core team, and the additional employee base will come from those same trimmers. So it'll keep growing.
So you'll start with one greenhouse, then two, then three, then four, or is it all
Two.
at once? Two
It's
at the
two.
begin?
Yep.
And then the process will be to rotate the crops through those greenhouses, as you call them? So,
Kind of. I could explain that if you wish.
well,
I might be.
I guess I was just trying to get some kind of a time frame on the development of, from start to finish here.
Sure.
And when you start, once this is all through the council and us, what is the time frame from that day till?
To be honest, my narrative in my final development plan that was submitted to the town gave probably a max time frame of 12 months to the additional 2 greenhouses that are on that specific site. Now, the triggers for that are demand, meaning for our site, we will be certainly in the top 2 or 3 as far as productivity goes in the state. Doesn't mean size, we're just hyper efficient, so we get more out of less. But the real trigger for that is the upcoming election for recreational. And so in the event that recreational takes hold this year, the supply will be astronomical. And so immediately we would most likely embark on erecting the additional 2 to support the industry. And then the expansion is just the lot to that we have option to right to the east of it for growth. So it's confined. There's, as far as efficiency goes, you have roughly 15 acres confined where somebody might be needing 50 acres to do the same type of production and volume.
Okay, one last question.
Sure.
How large is the organization that you belong to? You mentioned you have something in Phoenix, so you must be statewide. What number of facilities would you have when you finish all this? Or are you constantly growing?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I've spent 3 years building it from the beginning here since 2013, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get to this point from several aspects. My operation, which is down there, is slightly different than the one that's up here. So in other words, they don't carry the same corporate structures. That's not the same licensing in that business. That's me. I erected that. I kind of sealed it up, and this is a new expansion. This actually leap forwards us probably 3 years into the future, where most people were 3 years in the past, including this operation down here. The business is trending pretty aggressively as far as rate of growth. It's hard to produce the medicine that's going to be needed for the state under the current system and how they set it up. So the ones with foresight to curb that is a good thing. It's a good thing for the cities, it's a good thing for the towns and the communities, and it's a good thing for the industry. There's nothing we're doing there that's toxic, that's going to impact that site. It's going to impact the neighboring sites. We're not putting toxic chemicals in the ground. We're not releasing them into the air. We're providing medicine. It will change to a recreational piece, which I understand is different. We play part in both those spaces. I would say 70% of our energy is based on our patients and providing medicine that works for different ailments of all sorts. So it's relatively small in a sense, but by nature it's also relatively big.
Member Johnson, have you questions of the applicant?
He answered them.
May I have one more question, please?
The chair recognizes Member Woods.
Thank you. Your license is for medical marijuana? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. But you might have to ask that a different way.
I'm sorry?
You may have to ask that when you say, am I licensed for
No,
medical?
your company's licensed.
Yes.
It's for medical
From the
marijuana?
site perspective, the site becomes the license,
Okay.
not me personally.
So the initiative to make marijuana recreational, you could grow recreational marijuana? Would you have to get a different license for that?
It depends on which initiative gets accepted, but
There's
most
only
likely
one.
not.
One of them went by the wayside.
Yeah, in that initiative, no, current dispensaries will be able to immediately sell recreational marijuana. The cultivation doesn't really discriminate between any of the two, other than there is medicine that is specifically produced for certain things. It could be children with seizures, or it could be neuropathy, it could be cancers. So these are real specific, and they're grown a specific way. I kind of gave you that 70-30% breakdown. The industry seems to recognize roughly that, and it's certainly from our perspective, we see roughly 70% are true sick patients. 30% are probably have back pain or just taking it because they want to. It's probably helping their back pain and their inflammation, but that's probably not why they're taking it. So hopefully I've answered the question.
Yeah. So your organization, then, if they pass the initiative for recreational marijuana, you'd be ahead of the game, wouldn't you?
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
The chair has no questions for the applicant. We thank you for speaking with us. At this time, I would open the floor to the public. If anyone chooses to make a comment to the board, would you ask to be recognized, step forward, and give us your name for the record, please?
Chair Shimon?
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ron Fain. I'm with Fain Signature Group. Live in Prescott Valley, down in Quailwood Meadows, and we are the current landowner of the site that is proposed for medicinal marijuana growing facility. It fits in the overall design and plan for the Big Sky Business Park in its design and location, being located next to the salvage yard, U-Picket, and just not far from the town wastewater facility. So the neighborhood is very conducive for this type of use in terms of its impact on the surrounding community. So we're very supportive of this particular use in this location. I just wanted to let you know that in terms of long-term planning for Prescott Valley, long-term planning for expansion of job base and job growth in Prescott Valley, this particular facility is ideally located to not impact, it's in a high impact zone with salvage yard and sewer facility. So we think it becomes a good neighborhood, so to speak, in terms of all the uses that are surrounding in that area. You didn't ask that question, but I thought I'd just offer it for whatever it's worth.
The chair thanks Mr. Fain. Board members? Thank you, sir. Have we any other comments from the public? Hearing none, this portion of the hearing is closed. The matter will now come back to the board for discussion and deliberation. Members, comments and matters of discussion? Hearing no matter of discussion, I would ask for a motion on the matter. Hearing none, the chair will make one. Based on Prescott Valley Ordinance 753, allowing for the expansion of a cultivation facility as outlined in Town Code Section 13-15070C10, based on the compliance with the staff recommendations, the applicant or his agents obtain all state and local permits and licenses. Building permits be obtained prior to any improvements or construction. The expansion conforms to the Town Council approved final development plan. I move that we vote to approve use permit UP 16001. Ms. Jones, would you call the vote, please? Is there any further discussion before we call the vote? Yes, thank you, Member Gamble. The duration of this use permit is limited to 2 years and subject to renewal at that time.
Need a second?
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Member Johnson?
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon?
Yes.
Member Gamble?
Yes.
Member Wood?
No.
The motion passes with Member Woods voting no. Is there further business before the Board of Adjustment this evening? Mr. Gonzalez?
No, nothing further before the board, thank you.
And at that point, this meeting, the June 27th meeting of the Prescott Valley Board of Adjustment is adjourned. Thank you all.